Welcome to another deep dive today. Today we're going to be talking about something I think is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about environmental stewardship, but from a Muslim perspective.
Oh, very interesting.
We're looking at a speech given in 2008 by the Islamic scholar Fethullah Gülen.
Okay.
And we have two sources that are based on that speech, and we're going to try to figure out just what is the Islamic perspective on the relationship between humans and nature.
Yeah.
So the first thing I noticed is that Gülen criticizes environmentalism when it becomes ideological.
Right.
I was hoping you could unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah. So, he's not saying that protecting the environment is a bad thing,
Right.
but he's saying we need to be careful not to make it into some sort of rigid ideology. Instead, he emphasizes understanding the natural world as a book that reveals the creator.
Okay, so the Islamic perspective is more about seeing nature as a way to understand God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like seeing the divine reflected in the natural world.
Yeah.
And it's about finding that balance, avoiding extremes.
Right, there's that phrase in one of the sources, ifrat ve tefretler, which means excesses and deficiencies.
Right. Yeah, it's about finding that harmony, avoiding recklessly exploiting nature, but also not fearing it or trying to dominate it completely.
Yeah, and one concept that really stuck out to me was the idea of the Kainat Kitaba, which means the universe book.
Yeah.
And it suggests that nature is actually entrusted to us as humans.
Yes, and that's a key concept in Islamic environmental ethics.
Hmm.
This idea that nature is a divine trust shapes how Muslims view the responsibility toward the environment.
Wow.
It's like, just as the Quran is a revelation from God, so is the natural world. They both reveal the divine, but in different ways.
Okay, so we have a duty to protect nature.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
in Islam, humans are considered to be Allahn Halifezi, which means God's stewards on earth. So we have this obligation to care for this planet.
That's pretty powerful.
It really is.
And Gülen talks about how nature brings us joy. He has this really beautiful quote, "Gönüller in şira salan manzaraları," which talks about how landscapes fill our hearts with this expansiveness.
It's so true.
How does that fit in with everything we've been talking about?
It ties into the concept of tefekkür, which means contemplation. It's about using the natural world as a way to reflect and to gain a deeper understanding of God's creation.
Yeah.
It's not just about preserving nature, but also about cultivating awe and gratitude.
I see. There's that story about how Gülen found comfort in looking at the stars during a difficult time in his life.
Yes.
And it just shows you how strong that connection with nature can be.
Right. It speaks to the spiritual nourishment we can get from the natural world.
So we've talked a lot about this kind of philosophical, spiritual side of things.
Right.
But I'm curious about the practical side, too.
Yeah.
Our source mentions that while environmentalism itself isn't mentioned in the Quran, there's a big emphasis on imar, which means constructive development.
Right.
What does that tell us?
Well, imar encourages Muslims to engage with the world in a way that benefits both humanity and the environment. So it's about progress, but it's about responsible progress.
I see.
We can see it in something as simple as building a house. It's not just about throwing up any old structure. It's about creating something beautiful and functional that's in harmony with its surroundings.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do those Islamic teachings guide environmental practices?
One of the core principles is avoiding israf, which means waste.
Oh, okay.
And that goes beyond just material things.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the value in everything that God has given us and using it wisely, not just squandering it.
It's about respect.
Exactly.
A lot of people are probably guilty of wasting food or, leaving the lights on when they leave a room.
Right. Israf teaches us to be more mindful and to appreciate even the smallest things.
And, we can look back at the Prophet Muhammad's life for an example.
Right.
When he established Medina, he set it up as a model city with protected green spaces and animals. It's like a blueprint for sustainable urban development, and it's incredibly relevant even today.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
So these ideas have really deep roots.
They do. These principles have been embedded in Islamic teachings for centuries.
So are there any other examples from the Prophet's life that we can learn from?
Yeah. The Prophet was known for his compassion for animals. There's even a story about him diverting an entire army just to protect some bird nests.
Really?
Yes, and it just goes to show the level of respect that he had for all living beings.
It's pretty incredible. And of course, there's that famous story about the person who cares for a thirsty dog being rewarded, while someone who mistreats an animal faces the consequences.
Right.
I think that sends a pretty strong message about ethical responsibility.
It does. It really highlights how our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
This is giving me so much to think about.
Good.
And one thing that really stands out to me is the term kudus, which is one of God's names.
And it means the pure one. And I know it's connected to this idea of environmental balance.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Kudus points to this inherent purity and interconnectedness that we find in nature. It's about understanding that everything from the vast celestial bodies to the tiniest microorganisms all play a role in keeping creation balanced and pure.
Wow.
It's like this perfectly choreographed dance where every element, no matter how small, contributes to the overall harmony.
I love that analogy.
And it's not just a poetic notion. Bediüzzaman, who's another Islamic scholar mentioned in the source, talks about how even the smallest creatures play a role in maintaining the world's cleanliness and balance.
I see.
Think about the humble dung beetle, often overlooked and even considered a nuisance, but it plays this vital role in decomposition and nutrient cycling and even pest control.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
Right. So Kudus reminds us that even those seemingly insignificant creatures contribute to the greater good.
It really does make you see the world differently. So we've been talking about the Islamic perspective on environmental stewardship from both the spiritual and the practical side.
Yes.
But how do we actually apply these principles to the environmental challenges that we face today?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. And I think it's a question for everyone listening as well.
Absolutely. It's a collective challenge that requires collective action.
So what can we do?
Well, for starters, the idea of israf, avoiding waste, has huge implications for how we consume resources.
I see.
It's about everything from being conscious of our food waste to being mindful of our energy use. And even small changes can have a ripple effect.
And thinking about nature as a trust challenges us to think long term.
Exactly. Are we being good stewards of the planet for future generations? What kind of legacy are we leaving behind?
It makes you think.
It does.
So these principles can help us address issues like pollution and climate change and resource depletion.
They absolutely can. They provide a framework for making ethical decisions about how we interact with the environment. I was just reading an article about a group of young Muslims who started this initiative to clean up a polluted river in their city.
Really?
Yeah, they were inspired by the concept of kudus, and they felt this responsibility to restore the purity of their environment.
That's an inspiring story.
It is.
Yeah.
It shows that it's not about imposing a set of rigid rules, but it's about fostering this mindset of respect and responsibility.
And recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Exactly. Our actions have a ripple effect. It's like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
A small change in one part of the system can have a huge impact somewhere else.
I like that. So what is it that really stands out to you in all of this? What resonates with you personally?
For me, it's the emphasis on contemplation tefekkur. It's a call to slow down and to really observe the natural world and to learn from it. And in our fast-paced world, I think that's more valuable than ever. It's about finding those moments of stillness and connecting with the beauty and wonder that's all around us.
It's about taking the time to appreciate creation.
Yes, and that appreciation, that sense of awe that can really fuel our commitment to protecting the environment.
It's not just about beauty.
No.
It's about love and seeing the sacredness in nature.
Right. It's about seeing the divine reflected in every leaf, every raindrop, every creature.
I like that. So it's about cultivating this sense of wonder and gratitude for creation.
It is.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as taking a walk in nature can be an act of tefekkur.
How so?
Well, as you feel the breeze on your skin and hear the birds singing, you're engaging your senses and connecting with that divine presence in creation.
It's a perspective that goes beyond any one culture or religion.
Absolutely. It's a universal message that speaks to what it means to be human, to be connected to the web of life that sustains us all.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored the Islamic perspective on environmental stewardship, and I think there are so many valuable insights here that we can apply to our own lives.
I agree. It's a perspective that offers hope and inspiration. It reminds us that we have the power to make a real difference, both individually and collectively.
So to wrap things up, we'd like to leave you with a question to think about.
Okay.
Considering the concept of nature as a trust from God and a reflection of his attributes, how might that inspire you to take personal action towards environmental stewardship?
It's a powerful question to consider.
It really is.
If we believe that nature is a divine gift entrusted to our care, how does that change our relationship with the earth?
Yeah. Does it make us more mindful of our consumption habits or more likely to speak up against environmental injustice? Are we more willing to make sacrifices for the sake of the planet?
These are all important questions to ask ourselves.
Yeah, they really are.
It's about moving beyond this idea that environmentalism is someone else's problem and embracing it as a personal and spiritual obligation.
Spiritual obligation.
It's not just about following rules, but about aligning our actions with our deepest values.
I see. And for those who are inspired by the Islamic tradition, I hope this deep dive has shown them a path toward a more harmonious and sustainable relationship with nature.
Yes, and that path is open to everyone. To see the divine in creation, to care for the earth, and to live in a way that honors the interconnectedness of all things.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new things to think about and inspired you to take action, however small, to protect this beautiful and fragile planet we call home.
It's been a great discussion.
Yes, next time.
Take care. It really does.
This has given me so much to think about.
Yeah.
And, speaking of this interconnectedness, one of the terms that came up in our source material was kudus,
Right.
which is one of God's names, and it means the pure one.
Yeah.
And it's connected to this idea of environmental balance.
Right.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, kudus points to the inherent purity and interconnectedness that we see in nature.
Yeah.
It's this understanding that everything plays a role, from the vast celestial bodies down to the microscopic organisms.
Right.
And they all work together to keep creation balanced and pure.
Wow.
It's like, imagine a perfectly choreographed dance where each element, no matter how small, contributes to this overall harmony.
I love that.
And, it's not just a poetic notion. Bediüzzaman, another Islamic scholar who's mentioned in our source material, interprets kudus as this emphasis on the role that even the smallest creatures play in maintaining the world's cleanliness and balance.
I see.
Think about the dung beetle, for example,
Yeah.
often overlooked,
Yeah.
even considered a nuisance.
Right.
But it actually plays a vital role in decomposition and nutrient cycling, and even pest control.
Wow. I never thought about it that way.
So kudus reminds us that even these seemingly insignificant creatures are contributing to the greater good.
That's amazing. So we've been talking about this Islamic perspective on environmental stewardship from both the spiritual and the practical side.
Yeah.
But the big question is, how can we apply these principles to the challenges that we face today?
That's a great question.
And it's a question for everyone listening, too.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a collective challenge, and it requires collective action.
So what can we do? How can we take these concepts and put them into practice in our own lives?
Well, I think, for starters, the idea of israf, avoiding waste, has huge implications for how we consume resources.
Okay.
It's about everything from being mindful of food waste to reducing our energy consumption. And even those small changes can add up and make a difference.
And this idea of nature as a trust really encourages us to think long term.
Exactly.
Are we taking care of this planet for future generations? What kind of legacy are we leaving?
Right. We have to think about the impact of our choices.
So these principles can guide us in dealing with things like pollution and climate change and resource depletion.
They absolutely can.
Yeah.
They give us a framework for making ethical decisions about how we interact with the environment. And it's not just about theory.
Right.
I was reading this article about a group of young Muslims who started an initiative to clean up a polluted river in their city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were really inspired by this concept of kudus and felt a responsibility to restore that purity to their environment.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a great example of how these principles can be put into action in the real world.
It shows that it's not about following a rigid set of rules, but about having this mindset of respect and responsibility.
Exactly. And recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Right.
Our actions have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that butterfly effect.
I like that.
One small change can have a big impact somewhere else.
So out of all of this, what is it that really stands out to you? What resonates with you personally?
I think for me, it's that emphasis on contemplation tefekkür. It's that call to slow down and to really observe nature and to learn from it. And, in our busy world, I think that's so important.
It is.
It's about finding those moments of stillness and connecting with that beauty and wonder that's all around us.
And taking the time to appreciate creation.
Yeah, and it's that appreciation, that sense of awe that can really fuel our desire to protect the environment.
It's not just about fulfilling a duty.
No, it's about love.
It's about recognizing the sacredness in the natural world.
Right. It's seeing that divine reflection in every leaf, every raindrop, every living creature.
That's beautiful. So it's about developing this sense of wonder and gratitude.
It really is. Even something as simple as taking a walk in nature can be an act of tefekkür.
Oh, how so?
So as you feel the breeze on your skin and hear the birds singing,
Yeah.
you're engaging your senses and you're connecting with that divine presence that's in creation.
It's a perspective that goes beyond any specific culture or religion.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
It's a universal message. It speaks to what it means to be human, to be a part of this web of life.
It's been fascinating talking about all of this with you.
It has.
We've explored this Islamic perspective on environmental stewardship, and I think there are some really valuable insights here that we can all learn from.
Yeah, I think it offers hope and inspiration too. It reminds us that we have the power to make a difference.
I like that. So to wrap things up, we'd like to leave you with a question to ponder.
Oh.
Thinking about this idea of nature as a trust from God and as a reflection of his attributes, how might that inspire you to take personal action towards environmental stewardship?
It's a really powerful question to think about.
It is. If we believe that nature is a gift that's been entrusted to us, how does that change our relationship with the earth?
Right.
Does it make us more aware of our consumption habits, more likely to speak out against environmental injustice, more willing to make sacrifices for the planet?
These are all important questions that we need to ask ourselves.
They really are.
It's about moving beyond this idea that environmentalism is someone else's responsibility and really embracing it as a personal and spiritual obligation.
A spiritual obligation.
It's not just about following the rules. It's about aligning our actions with our deepest values.
And for anyone who's inspired by the Islamic tradition, I hope this discussion has shown them a path toward a more harmonious and sustainable way of living.
Yeah, I think that path is open to everyone. To see the divine reflected in creation, to treat the earth with respect, and to live in a way that honors that interconnectedness of all things.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some food for thought and inspired you to take action in your own life to protect this beautiful planet.
It's been a great conversation.
Until next time.
Take care. Yeah, the powerful question to think about.
If we really believe that nature is a gift from God, like something that's been entrusted to us,
Right.
how does that change the way that we interact with the earth?
That's it.
Does it make us more careful about the things that we consume? Does it make us more willing to speak out against things that are hurting the planet? More willing to make sacrifices, for the well-being of the earth?
These are all really important questions that we all need to be asking ourselves.
It's about going beyond just thinking, oh, someone else will take care of this problem.
Exactly.
And realizing that it's something that we all have a responsibility for.
It's a personal obligation.
Yeah.
Even a spiritual obligation.
It's not just about following a set of rules,
yeah.
but it's really about living in accordance with our values.
Exactly.
And, for anyone listening who's inspired by the Islamic tradition, I think that this deep dive has shown a path toward a more harmonious way of living.
Yeah, a more sustainable way of living in the world.
And it's a path that's really open to all of us.
I think so.
To see that reflection of God in creation, to treat the earth with respect, and to live in a way that really honors that connection between all things.
It's been great exploring these ideas with you.
It really has.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive.
Of course.
We hope that it's given you some things to think about and maybe even inspired you to take action in your own life, however small, to protect this planet.
It's been a really great conversation.
Until next time.
Take care.